Welcome, good evening, welcome to the NewsDesk right here on television where we inform, impact and inspire you. As always, we gather around the desk to try to make sense of everything that has been breaking news and actually everything that has been your fresh views. It is Tuesday, the 18th of February 2025, and as always, we are diving into the biggest stories that have been tracking for you, and of course, it's no different even this evening. First up, Zanzu nightclub in Pretoria finds itself in a storm of outrage after shocking videos emerged. Its security violently circulating and assaulting and sexually humiliating some of its patrons. There we're going to be dive and giving you the analysis, and the question that we're asking you is, why does it take social media outrage for action to happen, right? We want to definitely find out a lot about that even in today's question. And then the brutal murder of Imam Hendricks has sent shocking waves across the country, as we know that the first openly gay imam was assassinated in cold blood just as South Africa celebrated its 30th of celebration there. We saw that a lot of things that have been happening there, developments out there. But was this a target or a hate crime, or what does this mean rather for the queer Muslim communities who are continuing to fight for acceptance? And also we break it all down as we try to make sense of it all. And then in the world of business and economics, as we all know that the South African unemployment rate did down a bit, as we all know, a 0.2% drop. It might be a good news, but is it enough to change the reality of over 8 million jobless citizens are winning the war of unemployment? That is the question that we'll be going to be taking a look into and diving into, but not forgetting a conversation that we are going to be bringing for you in Africa in view. The African Union has new leadership, but will it finally deliver on its promises? Mohammed Youssouf is stepping as the AU chairperson, and also Malika Habida is going to be taking on the role of the deputy. But the real question that we are asking here is, can the AU shake off its reputation, or is it just another political talk shop and actually push for Africa forward? Will we see this happening? That is definitely, we want to look into some of your previews and definitely take a look at your thoughts and what you view on this. But we are bringing you that poll question that we are asking you today. I want to definitely find out from you, since that Youssouf, Mohammed Youssouf has been declared as the new chairperson there. What do you think this will happen? You have 4 options there. We want to find out from you that do you know the African Union? Why does it exist? What is its role and responsibility? Or you still don't even know about them? You've got 4 options there. Definitely the first option there for you is that yes, I am informed. The second one is I am partially informed. The third one is I just know a little bit. And the last options there is I don't even know what does the AU stand for. If you are part of those people, don't worry, we'll keep you focused into that. Stay tuned, share your thoughts, and let's get right into it, because this is the News Desk. Reporting live from Johannesburg. Good evening to you. I am Kagiso Sithole. We begin this hour with very tragic news, as we all know that there's been a whole lot of videos that have been circulating around our social media platforms, where we are seeing a whole lot of people coming out talking about the Zanzu club that has been hitting waves in social media. That is the first. Pretoria is on the urge as students and activists were out there trying to break down and analyze what has been taking out, demanding accountability from Zanzu nightclub after shocking footage revealed bouncers sexually and physically assaulting patrons. Now students are blocking trucks from removing stock, refusing to let the clubs erase its tracks and continue as business as usual. As you all know that this has been some of the things that have been happening, especially within the clubs of South South Africa, where we're seeing a whole lot of people coming out, doing a lot of things, taking a lot of law on its hands. But the key questions that we are asking here this evening definitely have to be around the fact that how did we get here as a country, and what are the regulations and regulators of some of these restaurants saying about people taking matters onto their own hands. The Zanzu nightclub in Hatfield is not just only in hot waters after videos emerged showing its bouncers sexually and physically assaulting a group of young men. Why does justice in South Africa so often require viral outrage before we can actually take action? And that is the question that we are asking in our question today, in our debate that we are asking you right now, to saying that are nightclubs and security companies operating in impurity, as we are seeing that there has been a whole lot of outrage that has been taking place in a whole lot of people trying to find out justice, trying to find out what is definitely happening there. And the police spokesperson Adlenda Mate was out in in an interview with Clement Manyatela on Clement Manyatela's show on 702, reiterating the fact that this is what had actually happened, and the three of the men who were assaulted there have already laid charges. Let's listen into some of the interview.
And thank you once again. Let us firstly commend the social media community for bringing this matter to our attention, because if it was not for the social media community, we would not have known of the existence of these particular videos. It's also thank the cooperation of these victims that have come forward. Three of them, aged 20, 21, and 22, presented themselves at the Brooklyn police station, where our family violence, child protection, and sexual offences investigations unit were tasked to handle this particular case. So we have taken down the statements, and they have narrated to us what transpired on that particular day. They do indicate that this particular incident took place in January 2023, while the five friends were celebrating their matric results at the
Right. Listen to just that. That is Atlanta Amate, the South African Police Services spokesperson there, just reiterating the fact that, yes, these people have definitely laid charges. Three of them have laid charges. But this isn't just about a nightclub. This is a system that allows unchecked violence where the police, when such crimes happen. And as you heard before, that she said that this is an incident that happened in January, and only now that we are seeing videos coming out, circulating social media. And one of the person that was taking out these videos is alleged that it's one of the persons that was employed there as well, and was part of these sexual altercations and physical assaulting that were happening there. And we are seeing that even in that video, he's one of the people that were reiterating some of the violence and some of the actions that they wanted for these people to portray. If you haven't seen these videos, some of the actions that were taken there, it's people, young people who are, actually taking their bodies violated, in a sense that they were reiterating that they should do some sexually of bodily harm to themselves and touching themselves in sexual ways. They were forced to put in some bottles of liquor into their anuses. It's a very sensitive matter, and we are seeing that it is young people, and the police have actually advised that people should stop circulating such videos, especially knowing that it also diminishes the character of the people that are involved. These young people who are out there, who are, very sexualized and very physically assaulted. And why are security guards in this country acting like gangs instead of professionals, right? They should be the ones protecting. I mean, they are saying that these alleged young people have stolen cell phones, and also have taken didn't being able to pay some of the bills there. And we are seeing that the professionals there didn't act as professionals The sub's response has a bit of sluggish. Sub spokesperson Atlanta Mate confirmed in an investigation. But will the arrest be made as we are looking into this? The role of the bouncers culture, unregulated, often violated, and rarely held accountable. This is what we are seeing in many of these joints, where we are seeing in this restaurant that we are finding that people, bouncers, do take matters in their own hands. They are being unregulated and not being able to be held accountable as well. And as well, let's also look at the power of public pressure. Would this case be even investigated if social media hadn't exploded it, especially if this person who was part of this now has taken out these videos, and the police has also stated that they are in a search. They are also looking for also the person who also took out these videos to kind of try to make sense of this whole thing. As we all know, that the Zanzu management also took out a press statement there saying that the management became aware of these practices and an immediate investigation has been held, such as well as dismissal of security personnel who are responsible of the action thereof. In line of our commitment to ensuring a safe and secure environment, we ensure that our security services are fully registered and complaint security company that are accordance with the South African laws and regulations. We also have instructed that our staff and as well as the South African police services bringing this to the book. Definitely that is a statement from the Zanzu management. They're saying that they were aware of these, but why did it take time for them to actually come out and raise these things with South Africans? Or rather, when will South Africans say enough is enough when it comes to this? This case isn't just about one club, but it's about who really has the power in the country and the law, and as well as the lawmakers itself. And that is where we are seeing ourselves as a country that definitely a lot of analysis needs to be taken place, and a lot of stuff needs to be taken into account into looking at the fact that a lot of these people were definitely taken into account into the fact that they were sexually assaulted by club owners and sexually assaulted by the people that were supposed to be taking care of them, and definitely in a hint to protect them and making sure that they are protected by the state. But we'll definitely be bringing you more of those as the story develops as well. Now let's take a look at another story that has been taking rounds, and it's a very tragic story that has been making rounds onto our social media platforms, which is another assassinations that we are seeing as tributes pour in for the Imam Hendricks, who was openly gay imam, who was shot dead over the weekend. That is what we know, that the Imam Hendricks family are concerned about the death threats that he regularly received before his murder, but understood that his commitment to queer Muslim who wanted to practice Islam without shame. We all know, according to this, that this imam was gunned down the past weekend in Eqbecha, as we also seen that there was in cold-blooded there. A video was also circulated amongst social media platforms where showing that a man was inside, the imam was in his car. A CCTV footage was showing the man going towards the late Imam Hendricks there and shooting shots there, and we've seen that it has shown a very devastating waves into how was this going to be taking place, in that is this another assassination, or the real question that we should be asking is that when will the people who are supposed to be acting out as leaders coming out to taking out their voices, but they find themselves being gunned down, they find themselves, being assassinated? Because a lot of people have been saying that this has been an assassination. And a comment by Ria El saying that listening to the trade from the Muslims of SAFM this morning simply confirmed that there is little or no compassion in that community for any measure of religious freedom. The overall impression was of a totally brainwashed religious set which demands a complete mind control of its inheritance. And this also shows that this very same community still doesn't show remorse even even when the Imam, has been, gunned down, as we know that he is the first one to be openly gay, and we all know what the religious thoughts are saying about, especially such, people who are committing, or people who are part of the LGBTIQ plus community, and that is what we are seeing. And a lot of reports coming out to saying that this might be an assassination, and was this a target of hate crime, and what does this mean for queer Muslim communities fighting for acceptance? Are we breaking it down in a sense that even in when we are celebrating over 30 years of democracy in our country, we're still finding that there are other parts of this, not of mergers, that have been taken place, and a lot of communities have taken out their sense into taking out their remarks and reactions to this killing. Let's listen in.
Caused the killing. We're all waiting to hear. It does look like an assassination, but we're very cautious around framing it as such, because we just don't know at this point. Obviously, we do know that Muhsin was, had previously been threatened, that he risked his life regularly just by being who he was, but we really don't know at this point what actually happened.
Yeah, even the family reiterating there the fact that there has been a lot of death threats before his killing, and these death threats have been coming against him, and we are not even sure that was it because of he was being openly gay, and that is why this was happening. We are still not sure, but the family are still living in fear of their lives, and still asking the question that was this an assassination because of who he was, who he portrayed to be, and the rights that he was fighting for. He was supposed to be officiating a marriage this past weekend as he was assassinated in Gqeberha in South Africa. That is what we are seeing there. Another comment by Craig A saying that isn't that the agony of all religion, love, peace, acceptance of others unless the others are different to you. Very sad that he was killed because Allah made him a gay man. A lot of controversial thoughts around this. A lot of people looking into this assassination. Was it the Islamic community, or was it someone from who was against the LGBTQI plus community? We're still asking ourselves those questions, but definitely we will be giving a lot into that whole range for you, taking a look into those comments and also break down into those analysis right here on television. Follow us on all our social media platforms using the hashtag the NewsDesk or hashtag television360. You can find us on all our social media platforms at television 360. Right, let's move on to another story that we are tracking for you. This definitely has to be that the unemployment rate of South Africa sees a drop again within the fourth quarter. South Africa's unemployment rate has decreased marginally, with the latest data showing that 31.9% of South Africans are unemployed. But it's still, the question still remains, the fact that there's a lot of young people who still find themselves unemployed, and we are still asking ourselves that even when we are seeing this slight drop, does it mean that there has been a whole lot of improvement? Finally, South Africa's unemployment rate has dropped by 0.2%, bringing us to 31.9%, an official unemployment, which sounds as if we are bringing another unemployment rate that is not only breaking down or going into a steeper look, because I'm thinking about the young people. I'm thinking of the young people who are there. It sounds like good news, but well, let's break it down. Does a 0.2% drop really change anything when it comes to unemployment? How many of these new jobs are sustainable and well paying, as well as we also think around this, looking into the youth as well? I'm thinking that we need to have a session where we are going to be bringing analysts and organizations for young people who are advocating and activists for young people to come and get a reaction, a sense onto what does this really mean question, because how many of these jobs are sustainable and are well paying? Are we being distracted from the bigger economic crisis when we look into the 0.2% that we are seeing? Because even at this, we are still seeing that young people are still at the cringe of this, because even these jobs, we might look at them seeing as if they are jobs that can be definitely taken care of, or jobs that are, that are well paid off, or long lasting jobs that we are seeing. But definitely that is a big question. 132,000 jobs were created, but let's be real, South Africa has over 8 million unemployed people there, and that's a drop in the ocean, right, that we are seeing with it happening there. And let's look at where these jobs are. The agricultural actually lost its jobs. So if they're saying some reports looking at the fact that some of the financial sectors are coming into the wave into this, and definitely taking a look into some of the facts into this regulations of taking a look that Statistics General Risinga Malika said that the unemployment increased in all sectors except the agriculture, and that is where we are seeing it marginally moving into broader commodities. But in an interview of SABC, let's listen into some of the reactions.
Better, but still, to keep that context, what's really happening. The unemployment rate is coming down. It's similar to what we saw about 2 years ago, but actually it's probably one of our best numbers since COVID. So very happy with that. We created about 350,000 jobs last year, which is great news. Better than could be expected with economic growth. But yes, fourth quarter numbers are often seasonal. We know that with holiday spending, there's more jobs in retail, accommodation, hospitality, etc. And then when we get to the first quarter, those numbers get adjusted again as some of those temporary jobs end. But for me at the moment, as we head into the budget speech, where we have to think about tax revenue and those things, taxes on personal income, this is a good signal, something that rounds off the 2024 data that tells us 2025 could actually be a good year from a jobs perspective.
Yeah,
that is an interview from the SABC on point there. Getting some reaction on the unemployment rate seeing a drop and of 0.2%, but looking into the fact that the budget speech tomorrow, the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, will be, tabling out the budget speech. But let's take a look into, the youth unemployment remains a sky high. Are young people part of this growth that we are seeing? President Cyril Ramaphosa took out the SONA last week, and he also reiterated that they want to play part in making sure that young people are being accounted for when it comes to the unemployment, and actually being part of the country, even in the plans of the government, in making sure that they are being part of this growth. But especially looking at the fact that the government versus the private sector, who's actually creating jobs here, even as we're looking, because the battle still stays there, the battleground is still there, that who is actually making these jobs? Is it the private sector, or is it the government, or do we still have to see them coming together and trying to make sure that the unemployment rate continues to decrease from year on and year on, from quarter to quarter? Another thing that we need to be taking a sharp look into is the political spin into this, right? With the election coming, how much of this is just numbers being measured or message, right? Because we are taking a look into that the 2026 local government elections are coming next year, and a lot of seeing in the drops, a lot of political parties are going to come out taking out some of their reactions, taking out some of their manifestos, talking about how they are definitely going to work out into taking a look into providing jobs for young people, especially in South Africa. That is what we are seeing, a whole lot of young people who are unemployed, a whole lot of young people who find themselves without jobs, are still in the crisis of this. And even when the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, will be tabling out the budget speech there, we wonder what will be his thoughts around the youth unemployment and creating jobs, and seeing that there is a whole lot of range of things that are coming up and a whole lot of things that we are seeing, especially in terms of the unemployment rate dropping there, showing us that we are at 31.9%, a 0.2%, and the Statistic General Malika saying that the unemployment increased in all sectors except agriculture, showing the agriculture not making a huge increase there, even when this showing some sort of spectrum. Lucinga Maluleka said that the unemployment increased in all sectors except the agriculture, and in his words he says that we can see in terms of gains in the unemployment where we are saying of the third quarter we gained 132,000 jobs as seen there in his analysis there. The Statistics General taking out in the press briefing this afternoon in Pretoria, showing that the country's official unemployment rate has dropped by a marginal 0.2%, coming down to 31.9% in the fourth quarter. Despite this drop, 8 million of eligible people are still jobless in South Africa. I wonder what it says about the youth, because even the young people are still finding themselves unemployed, and even though we are seeing the 0.2% drop, it still shows us that there are still 8 million people who are still unemployed in South Africa. And what with the budget speech going to be tabled out tomorrow by the finance minister Enoch Godongwana, I wonder what is his thoughts around this, and where are they going to put young people? Are the young people part of this growth that President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke about in the State of the Nation address last week, when he tabled out some of the plans of the government of national unity ahead of this 4 years that they are going to be governing? As you all know that the 2026 local government elections are coming. What are these political parties saying about jobs in South Africa, especially for young people? Because this is in a national level and also in a district level. What are the councillors doing? Are the councillors providing jobs for especially the people of the country, the people of its communities? But definitely we are looking into that. South Africans don't need stats, they need real change. And right now 0.2% isn't going to feed families. What's the real plan into this? We know that the 370 now grant that was reiterated because of the social relief of when COVID came out, I don't know, is his plans going to be still around that? Are we growing young people to rely on grants now? What is the plan in South Africa into this? But definitely we are going to be taking a look into that. That is the big stories that we are covering for you this evening. From Zanzu protest intensifying, Imam Hendricks murder raises serious questions, and unemployment figures drop but don't necessarily impress. What do you think? Drop your thoughts on all our social media platforms. You love hearing from you. And don't forget the poll question that I'm asking you tonight ahead of our conversation with Shawn, our African news editor, as we are going to be dive into the African Union and its election in 2025. Do you know why the African Union exists and what is its roles and its responsibilities? You have 4 options there. Yes, I am well informed. The second one is I am partially informed. The third one is, what does the AU even mean? And the fourth one there, the option there is, I don't even know what does the AU even mean. Go on to all our social media platforms, even on our stories, and drop your thoughts and vote in all our poll questions there and keep the conversation going, because we definitely want to hear from you. What are your thoughts around the AU? And definitely, do you even know what the AU means? Especially as a young person, a lot of young people do not even know what the AU stands for, and that is what we're trying to find out into that, as we all know that they went into their elections there, and are going to be joined by our African news editor Shawn, as he's going to be sharing some of the insight and some of the analysis, definitely some post analysis of the 2025 AU elections that happened there. Without wasting time, let me just step into the everything that is in African news that we need to look into. Here is Africa in View. right? That time of the evening where we take a look into African news continent, right? As we all know that the African Union went into the elections this past few weeks ago, and today we are going to just look into the fact that Mohammed Youssouf as the chairperson, as well as Malika is the deputy chair there. But the real question is, will we see them fulfilling their promises, or will it be just another political talk? And as always, Shawn is here to give us his insights into everything that has been happening within the African soil. Shawn, very good evening to you and welcome to the News Desk.
Good evening, Kagiso. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much. Let's get into it. The first thing that we need to know is that we have a new chair, right, on the AU, and also a deputy. But do you think that with this leadership change that we're going to see results? And firstly, what do you think of this new leadership?
So the new leadership holds a lot of promise just in the fact that it actually saw a lot of coverage and a lot of interest being gained continent-wide. I don't think I've ever personally witnessed any such widely contested, but any even election or at the scale of the AU draw so much attention. And as far as that is concerned, clearly all eyes are on the AU and were on Addis Ababa over the weekend, which is a positive sight to see. And it was a very hotly contested election between Mohammed Ali Youssouf of Djibouti and Raila Odinga of Kenya, with Mohammed Ali Youssouf coming out victorious. And now that he is victorious with the Algerian, remind me a name, but the deputy from Algeria who came out victorious as well. It's also just a great sight to see as we have now not only a president, but a deputy from East and North Africa.
A lot of political analysts have been weighing this, even that we have a new set of faces. It might be still the same political game. Do you think that we are going to be seeing, promises and a change for Africa? We have been seeing a whole lot, especially now, even with the new Trump administration coming up, attacking Africa a whole lot. Do you think that they will finally stand up for Africa?
With regards to the AU, I would probably say that there is some hope as far as interest goes. As far as the power and the action to follow, I can't really say quite as much. I say where the hope probably comes from is through regional coalitions, as far as the EAC and SADC, ECOWAS, and so on and so forth go. However, even they have faced their own challenges with, for example, the Alliance of Sahel states withdrawing from ECOWAS in West Africa, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, even the SADC and the EAC struggling to settle what is currently unfolding in the DRC, and so on and so forth. And where all those struggles, I guess, manifest and unite is under the umbrella of the African Union. However, the African Union does struggle with its own set of challenges as far as being so far-reaching and so being spread out so thin. It struggles to really have its teeth, to get its teeth within the things that really plague Africans and the issues that they really have their heart set on.
And as you're speaking, I'm even thinking about the fact that a lot of young people, not actually know what the AU is all about and why it exists and its responsibility. Can you please just outline to us what is the role of the AU and why it exists? And in the next 4 years, as we have a new leadership, what would be some of their key roles and tasks that they need to focus in?
Okay, yes, would be my pleasure. I think, generally speaking, the AU as we know it today was actually only founded, I think, in 2002, but existed for much longer in spirit and was founded around the time most of the African countries we know today were liberalized in the late 50s and early 60s and so on. And it was largely pioneered by the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah. And back then it was known under the name of the Organization of African Unity, therefore being the OAU, and then only became the African Union earlier this century. And with that in mind, it is basically the largest stage and the largest institution in Africa. supposed to be the panel through which African unity is established, especially when you look back to some of the ways in which, for example, the now late Muammar Gaddafi tried to rally for unity across the continent. It was through the presidency of the African Union and so on and so forth. So largely, so far, I guess it has only existed as a conference, weekend conference twice a year between heads of states and so on and so forth. But it has its sights set on much, much more, and also establishing a 2063 agenda, which I guess would mark basically 100 years since the end of colonialism, and charting our own path and so on and so forth.
Has there been milestones in since the development of the African Union? I mean, I'm thinking about the fact that a lot of ordinary African citizens don't actually feel so close to it. Does it even matter on the ground?
Yes, I think that's a very valid question, because as far as the AU's mobilization efforts, I think probably the closest it comes is that to some degree it is a conduit through which some of the liaising for the African Development Bank happens. And in that sense is also the way in which mobilization for a lot of projects happens, such as like infrastructure, roads, trains, and so on and so forth. Although some of those projects, some of which I can name, have been, I guess, delayed, like so many other projects that were to come. So, for example, I think it's called, there was a highway to be built between Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Kenya, and so on and so forth, that I think was delayed. And as far as security goes, as I've said, within regional coalitions, SADC, EAC, ECOWAS, they have struggled to settle some of the instability that has struck them. But the AU actually mobilized to deploy a military mission to Somalia that has actually been ongoing for quite some time, the African Union Transitional Mission in Somalia, and which has actually been extended as of this year. It was set to expire at the end of 2024, but it has been extended, and I guess it was to help stabilize and also just help the government stand on its own 2 feet after the instability that faced it on account of extremist insurgencies. So every odd here and there will be some places in which it manifests into something happening on the ground. But truth be told, it largely fails to match the stature within it's supposed to be projected to stand with, and the muscle we all would like to think it has.
Very interesting, to find that there is a union, that is a body, that has to be looking into other things that are pertaining Africans and, development of the continent as a whole. I managed to look up at the mandate of the African Union, and it exists to promote unity, peace, and economic integration, right? And, do you think that with so far the leadership that we have had before, and now with the transition of the new leadership, there has been that delivery of the peace, unity, and also economic integration that we see?
I think as far as peace and unity go, I think maybe you could say they have struggled, especially as far as struggling to be a far-reaching outlet to what is a very expansive continent. I think a lot of times the AU draws comparisons to the European Union, for instance, but Africa is probably well over triple times, the size of the EU, and with hundreds of languages and so on and so forth. So it would be very stretched to match the scope of the European Union. And then as far as economic integration goes, there have been some applaudable attempts made towards that, and I think that largely comes in the form of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which was signed, and I mean, to some degree you could say it struggled to be actioned. For example, for the actioning of freedom of movement and goods, across all of Africa, for wider intra-African trade, and also in that case just more to go around and create an economic environment that allows the rising tide to lift all boats, and all Africa and African countries to rise up in step as far as economic prosperity goes. However, I probably sometimes struggle to see how that can come into being from this far-reaching floating organization, and to some degree I probably look to them to turn to regional consolidation to help and assist. For example, the coalitions which I've now mentioned severally, such as the EAC, SADC, ECOWAS, so on and so forth, in each corner of the continent, and to some degree they have, because, for example, with the presidency that was selected this year, the outgoing president, who was from Chad and therefore North Africa, the seat now went to East Africa, and that's why it was largely the chairpersonship was mostly hotly contested between Madagascar, Kenya, and Djibouti, three countries which, as far as which the AU designates as being within the East African jurisdiction. So they do actually create for some regional representation and a bit of a carousel that goes around and just ensures that everyone has an equal stake in the success of the African Union. So as far as those three goes, you could say some steps forward and maybe not enough, and the occasional step back, but in some ways it is quite the task to uptake for such a massive continent.
Yeah, it's always the case. That we're always hoping for something to go, as good as it can. Let's talk about the theme for the year that they have chosen and your thoughts around it.
Yes, so they've chosen this year to focus on reparations and the call for reparations for the many injustices that the African continent suffered at the hands of colonialism and at the hands of, for example, even the interior penetration that looted, for example, the coasts of East and West Africa for the for many slave trades, so on and so forth. And it is very timely. Not only is it very timely as it is time to reconcile even with the injustice of the past in order to move forward. But it's also very timely as it is a time within which many countries are also asking for their artifacts back. So, for example, the Benin bronzes and so on and so forth that, for example, are being agreed to be lent back to, for example, Ghana and so on and so forth. So I think the time to prompt such discussions and call those things into question is now, especially as you could also say the authority within which you could say European countries that partitioned Africa, if you will, is starting to wane. So it's basically starting to turn to them and being like, oh, there are probably a few things to answer to as far as the last century and centuries are concerned.
Yeah, definitely hoping that their mandate will come alive. Speaking of one of the priorities and mandate, one of their promises is that they want the African continent free trade area, which is meant to boost the intra-African trade and create jobs. I was just talking earlier about, our unemployment rate in South Africa, that it just dropped by 0.2%, which is not as, great as, we might say. But it's been years, but we still don't see the progress. What do you think is the hold up in making sure that these whole free trade and creating jobs for Africa and making African continent a very, tradable continent?
I think largely what is standing in the way is we could probably speculate as who it is at the hands of, and there are probably some fingers we would point towards as far as the cause of this, but largely and first and foremost is regional and also civil instability, whether at the hands of election unrest or extremist insurgencies or ethnic tensions. It is largely what also causes for apprehension for the opening up of borders, because, for example, a neighboring country may not want to or fears its inability to withstand the pressure of having a large number of refugees fleeing injustices and fleeing for their safety in their own countries and so on and so forth. Or they may fear that those same insurgents may come and penetrate their own countries and therefore bring them down to their knees as well, and so on and so forth. So I think many a times they say whether it's coordination, collaboration, people are not able to come together to the table and sort things out. But I think at the end of the day, that is the largest thing. But also it's something that I call into question the same way, because it also is very convenient that most of the places which are most plagued by such insecurity, such violence, and so on and so forth, are also the places that are blessed with the largest quantities of the world's most craved resources. So I wouldn't say it is quite as innocent as people just keep fighting. There probably are some questions to be asked us. Why do they happen to keep fighting in those places in the first place?
But now, as you know, this is a problem. What are the solutions into looking to this? What does the AU have to do in order for us to remove all this blockage and actually see this free trade happening in the African continent and make it work?
Yes, so I think that's a great question, and I think it's always very important to set our sides forward and not just get in a circle just lamenting the ways in which things aren't the way we are, and we come around to seeing how we get there. And some of the ways to start are definitely I think to some degree even holding people that and foreign bodies that call themselves and see themselves as benevolent. So, for example, a France or a Russia, a China or an America, and question the intent when they come into these places for one reason or another, whether for security cooperation, either to build roads and so on and so forth. Generally speaking, I think as far as foreign influence goes, there I think more vigilance should be exercised. And then also I think the AU must come into a place where it funds its own operations by the members, and the member countries also take it seriously and make it a priority in and of themselves, because until that happens, because it won't be taken seriously by anyone else, because as of today, for example, the European Union pays more into the African Union than the African member states themselves. So for example, if you wonder why nothing happens, or if anything does happen, it doesn't serve African countries, well, African countries are not funding the AU, so to some degree it is very reflexive of that on the ground. And then lastly, I would probably call back to what I have mentioned maybe one or two times, which is there must be some sort of regional delegation, because the AU must also come to some acknowledgement that Africa is not one country, and still there are many nuances that it would miss if it is coming from so far. And as great of a city as Addis Ababa is, it may not always know, for example, what is happening in Luanda, or what is appropriate for Lagos, and so on and so forth. And where that isn't possible, sometimes some things can be deferred and can even be reinforced with the backing and endorsement of the AU to these regional coalitions, and also just supporting the regional cohesion that will allow them to all now unite at this stage, and at these African Union conferences, presenting a united front to the rest of the world.
I think the regional works better, because if we have people regionally, knowing definitely what is affecting each region, it was going to be an easier and a smooth transition, so that they are able to deal with these matters that we are seeing that are being affected by the African continent. And hopefully we see that this leadership will take action. But as we wrap up our conversation, Shawn, what are your final thoughts around this? That are we definitely seeing a new dawn? Are we definitely seeing us breaking boundaries as African continent, or is it still too early for us to kind of weigh in and just judge before actually action happens?
I think as far as a new dawn comes, yes, I think we're definitely on the precipice of that, especially because even beyond Africa, I think many would say that the world order is more negotiable now than it probably has been in a lifetime, or many lifetimes, with regional and cross-regional conflicts happening across the globe at a rate never seen before. And with that, even allies turning into foes, and so on and so forth, and what were once powerhouses waning in their influence. And with that being in mind, I think Africa has a chance to renegotiate its place in the world. And with that in mind, there may be some tough times ahead. And even with, for example, aid being frozen and things like that, these are things that will bring on many a challenge, and that there's no denying that. But I think the most powerful place we can take is to take the opportunity that it presents head on, and hopefully just still put ourselves in a position to mitigate as much harm as we can, so that we do not lose as many Africans in the process. But as far as the new age being upon us, I think that is very much the case, and I think that is very much what is coming. So now it is up to us to make sure that that is for the better and not for the worse.
I know I said that we are wrapping up this, but as you're speaking, something comes into mind to say that, do we actually have young leaders in this whole African Union? Or we are still on that fight of actually getting young people to represent, the youth of the African continent?
I think that's a very good question, and it's actually a very insightful observation, because the African Union, many of the people who come into the African Union, even the new president is, for example, a former and outgoing foreign minister. So there are people who have worked their way up all the way, within their countries, and within leadership structures that are already antagonized, and they disadvantage the youth. So for them to get through that and then come to this new stage at the continental level, they often are on the much older side. As far as a youthful face being seen at the AU headquarters, I don't think that is a common sight at all, and I think it probably needs to change.
Something needs to happen as we move forward. I think they need to consider that also young people are also part of, they need to be part of this decision making to make sure that we grow and be futuristic. Shawn, it's always a great pleasure to have you as we, give us insights and break down everything that is happening within the African continent.
Of course. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you so much indeed. That is Shawn, African news editor from Malika, Africa. As you all know, that bi-weekly he joins us to give us a sense of everything that has been happening within the African continent. That's where we leave it with the African Union's new leadership has a huge task ahead, and can they move from diplomatic handshakes as well as to real change, or will it have the same conversation even in 2029, as we know that they have the 4 years to go and plan and to go change everything else. Let us know your thoughts and your comments, and make sure that you do vote in all our poll question using the hashtag #NewsDesk on all our social media platforms at Television360. That's where you will find us, and keep the debate going, and as we continue to break down all the analysis of everything that has been news headlines. All right, and just like that, we have come to the end of the Tuesday edition of the News Desk right here on television, where we inform, impact, and inspire you from hard-hitting conversations that are, affecting us as a country, tackling pressing issues in Africa, and spark some thought-provoking debate. But the conversation doesn't stop here. Please make sure that you continue to engage and leave your comment on all our social media platforms. Coming up on Thursday, we shift gears to the budget speech 2025. As you all know, that the finance minister, Inokodongwana, will be going into parliament tomorrow to make sure that they table out the budget speech. But will this bring a real economic relief, or just more political reiterates, or will we see a focus on the national, not being taken charge? Again, we'll be taking a look into the National Epilepsy Week that we saw happening in the month of February. We are going to be joined by the Epilepsy South Africa representative, who's going to be breaking down the latest stats, global comparison, and how young people can get involved in raising awareness. All right, that is another unmissable episode for you on Thursday. Set your reminders, set your time, same place, right here on the News Desk. Until we meet again, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep questioning narrative. I am Kagiso Sithole. Till we meet again, look after yourself. Good night.